Can I start now?
Still loading. And we're live.
Thank you. Welcome to this electronic meeting of the Wingecarribee Local Planning Panel on the 2nd of February 2022. I declare the meeting open at 3:35 p.m. My name is Julie Walsh and I'm the chair of today's panel. Also sitting with me are two expert members, Larissa Ozog and Alf Lester, and community member Chris McCann. I'll just run through some technical matters with you first. The meeting is being live streamed to the council's website and the recording will be made available on the council website. After the meeting, if everyone could please turn off their mobile phones and remain on mute until you're invited to speak. And when you have finished speaking, if you could please place yourself back on mute so that we don't get any background noise. I do need to mention that I had a few technical difficulties with my internet earlier, and I may need to turn my camera off if it gives me a message again that it's unstable, but I'll see how we go. Acknowledgement of Country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledges the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call the Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and I would also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here today. There are no apologies, and I'll just check with the members that there are no declarations of interest. Alf?
Unmute.
Just take yourself off mute, Alf.
I have no interest in any of the items before us today.
Thank you. Larissa?
Yeah, no conflicts or any potential interest from me either.
And Chris McCann?
No conflicts of interest to declare.
And I have no conflicts either. So I'll just run through the procedure for the meeting. The council website contains a copy of the operational guidelines for the panel meeting, but I'll summarise the most important points. All panel members have read the business papers and received a detailed briefing from council staff in relation to each item on the agenda today. The panel is charged with determining the two development applications and providing advice to council on the two planning proposals on the agenda today. We'll hear from registered speakers, objectors first, followed by applicants' representatives. Each speaker is generally limited to 3 minutes, but that may be extended at my discretion. The panel members may have questions and I may seek a response to any particular issue raised from the council officers. If there are a number of objectors speaking, which there are in item 5.1, there's no need to repeat what an earlier objector has said in relation to an issue. It's sufficient to say that you agree with what was said on that issue if in fact that is the case. Once a speaker has spoken, they will not be permitted to speak again unless it's in response to a question by the chair or another panel member. When we've heard from all speakers, we'll move into closed session and we'll deliberate and we'll then return to the public meeting to announce our decisions, and that will be live streamed as well. The minutes of the meeting will be placed on the council website within 2 business days. Okay, so if I could just start with the first speaker. I've got a list of speakers for item 5.1. I'll start with the objectors and then there is a representative of the applicant wishing to speak, and so they'll speak last. So I'm just going to move through the objectors in the list that I have them on my list, and the first one is Edna Carmichael. So I think I can see you there. So Edna, would you like to take yourself off mute and then you can address us? Edna, you just need to take yourself off mute.
I am.
Thank you.
So I had a mouse that didn't want to operate. Julie, I'm already going to stretch you 3 minutes, I think. Okay.
I'll just take it off someone else then.
Okay, rightio. Look, it's hard to say whether you're objecting to these sorts of things or not. None of us would live in their houses that we live in if we objected to developments all the time. We'd be under trees or, somewhere like that. So there were several issues raised by our community here, and presumably you have all read the submissions that were put in, and probably number one on those was a matter about stormwater. And I have looked at and read the minutes from the previous meeting. I've got a couple of things to raise from there. And some of them I could do by simply showing you some media file. Would you be happy for that?
I'm not sure
disappointed
whether
if you didn't want to.
I'm not sure we've got the facility to do that.
I can share my screen.
Okay, sure. If you think that would assist you, then by all means,
I
yes.
think hopefully it's going to assist you people.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if you can still hear me. Is that right?
Yes, yep, I can hear you. So I can see there's a number.
So this is the back of our property, which is number 4 at Wembley Road. There are a few short videos of that. That is a channel that you can see there in the centre that council put in last year. This is the side of our yard, and
So you're referring to slide A?
Number B we've moved on to now.
Right. Okay.
And this is the back of our yard, and that where the water is spilling over is about 40 centimetres high. And sorry about this, I sort of forgot about turning the camera sideways. You can see the rush and the force of the water there going through our backyard. Now, this is not really an unusual event, I'd have to say. And the speed and the force of the water again, and I'll save you from my very poor camera work here. I was worried I was going to get water in my gumboots. Okay, now that water is steaming away from the swale and the ARTC channels at the back of Wembley Road. Once again, that needs very little description, and that's now being fed into the channel that council built last year. And this is coming down Young Road from Wembley Road, all this water that you see here. And that's the channel that you saw.
Excuse me, could I just ask that the photograph be expanded so I can see it? Is that possible?
I'll just stop that for a second. Can you tell me how I do it?
If you click on, you should be able to click on the picture to open it up.
Not happening. That's the best I can do.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Now this is Wembley Road about 40 minutes after the storm had stopped, outside the front of our place at number 4. And you can see from there the volume of water that's coming along there. I'll fast forward that also for you. And that is this block of land we're talking about. Now, council calls that a meandering course running through there in their documentation. I fail to understand how that could possibly be thought to be a meandering course when the volume of water is like that. Now, this is going on to 2 things I want to talk about in our proposal, which is about traffic. This is Robertson Road, or the highway. It's traffic trying to come out of there. And I'm trying to make these things real for the people who are on this panel. And so they get to understand some of the things that we're actually talking about when we're talking about this environment. So there are 4 cars lined up there waiting to come out. And this is a soccer day, okay? A soccer day in June last year after rain. And not only can you see how many people are there, but you can also see that piece of land there. Now I'm going to fast forward and just stop that for you, because I also want to go back. Sorry, I've lost the meeting, so I have to stop the share. I could go back to any of those that people wanted to have a look at. I think it's clear that I can show you visually through those things that there are issues that are real issues that we're concerned about here. Obviously, I've got a vested interest because I'm at number 4. And whether you are familiar with this map or not, I don't know, or how well you can see it. It actually comes from the Wembley Road Farnborough Heights water flow study done by council in 2017 that I think they just gave up in the end and said, bugger, we'll do something for these people and try to get it over and done with. Now, that footage you saw of that raging water was on Monday of this week when it rained for about 47 minutes. It rained 1.5 inches. I've got a picture of that I could have shown you on our gauge. That's the sort of water we're talking about. Now, the houses in number 1 down to number 7 and 4 and 6 down to number 10 in Wembley Road often suffer issues about water. And in actual fact, one of the people here today on this meeting spent $35,000 trying to fix up the water issues in her backyard, and the people next door to her have got earth moving equipment in there at the moment doing the same thing. These things are real. I know council has lots of rules about not accepting responsibility for this, but this is a couple of things that were told to community people here at our house in 2015 by council's engineers. There's no inter-allotment drainage in the whole area. The council allowed the developers to plant trees in the swales. They don't carry out maintenance on the channels unless they're called out to do so and make an evaluation about it. They've not got an agreement with the ARTC to actually discharge water onto railway land. And I know in the development that's taking place already across the road from where I live on the corner of Young and Wembley Road, that the ARTC were never informed about that development. And I quite seriously wonder whether they've been informed about this development, because it's going to discharge a lot of water on their land. Now, I've looked at the new proposal put in by the developer. I wonder why on blocks 17 to 22, the diversion of drainage water is on the back of those blocks. But I noticed that every single block eventually ends up over at the detention basin in Wembley Road. And I know that your panel have had a lot of conversation about that and questions from the previous meeting. I've got a suggestion. Right? I know bugger all. Okay, I've got a suggestion. All the people who are on the eastern or southeastern boundary, their water could go down the back of their blocks, go into Wembley Road. Could be 2 drainage systems, blocks 12 down to 17, could run down the front of the blocks. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 could run down the side of the blocks, at the back of the blocks of the new development. 2 lots of drainage, 2 separations of a huge force of water. Same thing could happen on the other side. Drainage systems could be altered so that, in actual fact, the amount of water powering down there constantly all the time could be in some way altered. It may improve one of the other things that you have been worried about, and that is the detention basin. Who's going to look after it? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to be responsible for it, and all the rest of it? If you have a look at the development on Young Road, the detaining thing yesterday was full, and the houses aren't even all built. So I haven't got very much satisfaction about the fact that something on the opposite side there in the new development is going to have some sort of issue in fixing up some of these issues that take place. And yes, we've all spent a lot of money. I've got industrial drainage around our house because in 2016 we had to get the SES in and save the house. Water in the garage, council discards it. It's got to be in the house. Well, I tell you what, if you spoke to the people and the number of times they drain out their garages and stuff like that, it's a different story. But I've proven to you that stormwater is definitely an issue on this block. Now, the water here comes all the way from Narellan Road, 45 metres high, all the way down here to the ARTC channel, plus all the water from Kings Road on the opposite side of the railway line. We are talking about a lot of water. If you people don't know the area, you don't understand the issues. You don't understand the problems. You can write anything down on paper. It's 1D. You know, we're trying to give you a 3D image of what's going on around here. I think the footage about the soccer fields, the footage about trying to access Wembley Road, give you another good indication that we're not just whinging. We're talking about real things, and things are going to happen. With the development across here presently in the new development, there'll be over 300 extra trips a day. That's your reasoning. I just did your same figures on the new development. It's real. What about all the other vehicles? All the postage packages that are going to be delivered, all the new services that are coming along, people having their air conditioning put in or whatever the case might be. I raise these things because I've raised issues, and I see that Rowley is here. I've raised issues with Rowley about the fact that the development at 15 to 19 Wembley Road, the people have put in new DAs. Every single tree except about 10 has been cut down, and they were supposed to be saved. And his answer to me, which is a correct answer, people put in a DA, council makes a decision about it, something happens. If we say to you, go ahead, do anything you want, everybody who comes and puts a DA to build a new house can change something. There is no consistency across the board about what's happening. And I noticed that Nancy Sample is here. The day the 3 days, they were cutting down all the trees across the road from where I was. I rang council every single day and said, how the hell can this be happening?
So, Ms. Carmichael, if you could see if you could wrap it up.
So I will wrap up for you. And the other one that I think we're concerned about, or some people are, is sewerage. Okay, we've got people along Wembley Road who not only get a backup of sewerage, but get the smell of sewerage in heavy rain in their houses. And those things, I think, are things also that, again, put perspectives on things. And it's why people here are certainly worried. I have to say, finally, I'm very, very happy that you're looking at trying to get a walkway to go through. I've got a suggestion for that for later on, if you would like to come back to me.
Okay, so can I just ask, so your address is 4 Wembley Road. How long have you lived there?
About 12 years.
12 years.
Yep.
And those photos that you put up, is it possible to email those to the council?
Funnily enough, council should have a whole lot of USBs that I drop in on different.
But I'm just wondering those particular ones, because
I can certainly organise for you to have those.
So
no trouble.
So I'm just trying to work out what. So Lisa,
yes.
what would be the best email address to send those through?
I've already just sent Edna, when she put them up, an email, quick email
Okay,
asking
thanks,
her to
Lisa.
send me it directly. She might have to send them individually depending on the size of the video.
Okay.
No,
Thank you very much.
you're
Thank
right.
you. So I've just turned my camera off because it's telling me my internet is unstable. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So the next speaker, so thank you, Ms. Carmichael. The next speaker I have is Rad Lewis. And Mr. Lewis, as I indicated, if you agree with what's been said about those issues, particularly stormwater and traffic, there's no need to talk about them again, other than to say that you agree with what Ms. Carmichael put. Thank you. Please proceed. You're on mute, Mr. Just check yourself off mute.
Okay, how's that?
We all do that.
Yep.
Thank you. Yeah.
The
Thank you.
stormwater issue is a significant issue. There's no doubt about that. In the last week, with the heavy rain we've seen, it's just been a diabolical situation in Wembley Road, and the current development there is just a total mess. It's just appalling. to confirm Edna's concerns. I'm also concerned about the whole of the Southern Highlands. What's happening in the Southern Highlands, I see.
Can everyone else hear Mr. Lewis? I'm just...
He has
No,
frozen.
it's frozen.
South Western Sydney. And I think that we've just got to put a...
So, Mr. Lewis, your screen keeps freezing. I'm wondering if you can turn off your video, and that might make it work better.
It's insanity. I'm sorry.
So, yeah, sorry, I was saying you keep freezing, and I'm wondering if you turn off your video, it might make the sound work better. Can you try that? Just turn off your video. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Say something.
Is that any difference? Yep. Okay, so what's happening to the Southern Highlands is these sorts of developments I just find just totally out of scale, totally out of place. There's housing sites now. This development, all of these lots are around 700 metres. And I understand the developer is going to try and squeeze in some extra.
Mr. Lewis, we're still having trouble hearing you.
This will not be agreed to. And the planning that you can see in this area are just quite surprising, I have to say. The streetscape in Young Road, there are different design streetlights that are totally inconsistent and an eyesore. The planning, the lack of planning in the area is just shameful. I think that I may be that this is just overdevelopment. This particularly 100 trees that are going to have to be cut down for this development. It's just diabolical. There are a lot of people share this feeling. So that's basically all I want to say.
Thank you. And I'll just ask if any of the panel members have questions, and I forgot to ask if anyone had any questions of Ms. Carmichael, so I'll ask that as well. So, Larissa, did you have any questions of this speaker?
No, I didn't have any for Mr. Lewis, but I did want Ms. Carmichael maybe to just quickly go through. She did mention about the pedestrian pathway, that she had an option or a design.
So we might just finish off with Mr. Lewis.
Sure.
Alf, did you have any questions of Mr. Lewis?
No questions, Mr. Lewis. I was also interested in the pedestrian connection.
Okay. Yeah, we'll come back to Ms. Carmichael. Mr. McCann, did you have any questions?
No questions no.
All right. So, Ms. Carmichael, Larissa, if you could just, Larissa has a question for you. Thank you.
Okay. This depends on lot number 1. If there was a solution, I've offered a suggestion. I don't know, because I'm, not a hydrologist. I don't know. A suggestion about drainage in Wembley Road, to break it up so that not so much is going to go all the way through the swale next to the preschool. May I also just say on that one issue, everywhere town water meets the railway channel, it's at a T. Now, you don't have to be a hydrologist to figure out water smashing into a wall can't really do anything other than back up, which only compounds the problem with the amount of water that forces. But if you look at that block, and if there's another solution, or if some of the water is diverted down to the swale in Young Road at the soccer fields, and it's not all going past the preschool, that block does not need to be that big. And in actual fact, the boundaries going from there all the way from block number 10 could actually move down the hill. So you'd have down the hill creep in the sides of those blocks. And that means that in actual fact, block 10 and block 11 could actually have a pathway built between them, and it swings up on the western side of block number 10, and it comes out on the verge of James Street number 1, which is all grassed. And that's one of the worries that is in the council papers. Mind you, I walk along there every morning and one way or the other. And yep, it's a bit dicey going through there. But that would be a solution. It doesn't need much to be cut off that larger block, which is 1100 something or other. And for a bit of creep to take place along the boundaries, and suddenly you have got a walkway going there. I am fascinated to know why number 10 still needs access onto the highway and why it can't come the other way. But if you did that, the garage on number 11 would now belong to number 10 where it belongs, wouldn't need to be knocked down, so we're saving the environment a bit. But obviously in the back of my mind, I think whoever buys that block is going to put a DA in to knock down everything anyway and start again. Why the developers haven't done that, I'm not quite sure. But that would allow you to have a walkway. It would come out next to the fence on number 1 James Street, and then people can take their chances on being run over as they drive down Robertson Road. I also note that about the crossing in your documentation, Larissa, it says that there are informal crossings at Bircham Street and James Street. I think you saw the thing about the traffic, the video about the traffic. I'm not sure many people are going to want their children skipping across the highway to get to the high school at an informal crossing. And my morning, every time I walk up Young Road, I wait and take a good listen to find out if there's a car about to come up over the rise and along Robertson Road before I even trek across there in the mornings anyway. But there is a solution that could get you the pathway, which does virtually hardly anything to the allotment. If they want 22 lots, they get 22 lots. I agree with Rad, though. I think, the overdevelopment, considering the size of most of the blocks as you move around this part of Wembley Road and everything, we've all got very large blocks, certainly not the 700 model. Okay.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
so
Thanks.
Alf, did you still have a question?
No, I think that's responded to
answered?
the issue. Yeah, thank you.
Chris, you can?
No, there was just one issue that was raised by Edna earlier when she referred to that there was actually no maintenance that was being undertaken by council in looking at the channels after there'd been significant downpours. I live in the Southern Highlands myself, so I'm just interested in understanding what's happened over the past 2 months, considering the considerable amount of rain that we've had.
The first time we had rain after this channel had been put in down the back of the oval, and I've got to say that channel was built because council did not want to have to negotiate with the ARTC about accessing land to assist with the cleaning out of channels or paying for them to clean the channels out. And so there was and that's because council already knew that the channel at the back of the oval is more than 20 metres away from the middle of the railway track, and therefore it was their responsibility. But the very first rain we had, Chris, after that channel was already half full. The swale here at Wembley Road, the lady who lives in number 2, who's almost 90, rang the council almost on and off for 2 weeks to ask for that to be cleared out so she didn't have snakes down the veggie patch. And they eventually came along and they got the whippersnipper out and the mowers and stuff and cleared the channel out a bit. Now, that would be the first time. And I might, in actual fact, in taking photos, I'll take some photos of what those two channels look like at the moment now after that downpour on Monday. So you can have a visual record of that as well if you'd like, Chris.
Thanks, Edna. Thank you.
Okay. Yep, I'll do it.
Okay, so the next speaker I have here is Sharon West.
Julie, Julie, it looks like that Sharon hasn't joined the meeting at this point.
Sure, okay. So then the next speaker I had was Patricia Wright. I can see you on the screen. If you could just take yourself off mute. Thank you. So again, there's no need to go over what's been said other than if you want to say that you agree with it or if you've got something that's new. Thank you.
Well, my issues are the water issues. I spent $35,000 protecting my house from the waters.
Also, can I just check what your address is, Patricia?
6 James Street, Moss Vale.
Thank you.
My neighbour next door to me on the high side, he's going through what I went through in 2016. At the moment, my property is very wet, but the problem with the water is it's all coming from the hill above. I could only protect my house, which is what I've done at great expense. But so water issues are something that really need to be addressed in this area. But my issues are accessing Robertson Road from James Street. Edna has raised that problem, but I can only reiterate how dangerous it is, the speed limits. The cars come around the corner so fast. It is a 60 zone. We need something to slow the traffic down with increased traffic. Also accessing out, you can't see. And my concern is, and I've raised this in my submission, is that walking along Robertson Road, there's heavy traffic. There's only the shoulders of the road to walk on. There is no footpath. And if we want to walk around, Edna's raised the issue of a walkway, but we need to be able to go further than James Street. I've raised it with council many elections about a footpath past the showground, but I was told, well, nobody's ever asked for a footpath past the showground. But we've got kids walking on the shoulder of the road, going to McDonald's and the railway station. They're my issues, the traffic, the speed of the traffic going down James Street and getting out. And now we're going to have, if we've got 22 houses, that'll be 22 families with probably 44 cars. Going to work in the morning, going to take kids to school, picking up kids, training, whatever they do. So we've got a huge traffic volume coming James Street or Church Road, getting out onto Robertson Road. And Robertson Road is becoming so unsafe for pedestrians, for school kids, for people just wanting to go for a walk. It's not ideal.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. Just check. Larissa, did you have any questions?
No questions from me. No.
Alf, did you have any questions?
No, I think it matches up with the earlier descriptions we got from Edna.
Chris?
Julie, could I just say something?
Sorry, is that Patricia? Yeah.
Could I just say something? The footage of the soccer fields, it's the purpose of that is to show council that they could easily build a quite substantial car park down there, which hopefully would encourage people to go down Church Road and not James Street, because they know they're going to get available parking. And there's plenty of land there for them to do it. But once again, it requires spending money, and council's a bit careful about, or the previous council, very careful about spending money.
Okay, so Chris, I was just asking you whether you had any questions of Ms. Wright.
Ms. Wright, yes, the only one I wanted to clarify. So you said that the water was flowing quite significantly from above. You're referring to the water flow from Robertson Road?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, so Denise Heaslip, did you wish to speak or?
Yes. You're unmuted, yes. Yes, I did.
Thank you. Yes. So I'll repeat the same comment before. There's no need to talk at length about the issues that other people have raised if you agree with them. Thank you. Have you taken yourself off mute? I think you're still on mute.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, we're not tech whiz here. I did send a letter into council, and I don't know whether I need to repeat any of that, because most of it follows the same sort of things that we've discussed today.
Yes.
I did.
If you could just concentrate on your key issues. Yes.
Yes, I did mainly want to put a more personal point of view and point out that the majority of people who live in James Street are retired. So we don't use our street as often as other people use their streets. It's a quiet street, it's a leafy street, it's a pleasant street, and it always has been. And this is what we came here for. All of us purchased our homes here to live a quiet life. And it's really disappointing, extremely disappointing, that we have lost the environment that we anticipated for our retirement. However, having mentioned that, I will reiterate on the water problem. And I just want to point out, as Tricia said, the house next door is having extensive work done on their drainage, including having a big backhoe thing in there. And they started that work before the weekend, before the rain on Monday. So that proves that this is an ongoing problem with water coming from the top of the hill, and the natural gradient of our town comes down towards us. With my own block, the water runs diagonally across my back, right through to the front in a diagonal. So everything gets washed down. Now, the other thing was the traffic. I did want to just ask about the traffic. I had asked if the cul-de-sac could be turned around. And I do see from the literature that we received from council that it can't be turned around because of clause 101(2)(a), which virtually says, in brief, that no, it can't grant consent unless, where practical and safe, vehicular access to the land is provided by another road. I want to just query the point where council feels that James Street is safe. There is no clear visibility to the right. There's a dip in the road and it obscures the view of small vehicles, or more particularly motorbikes. And we get a lot of motorbikes up and down Robertson Road. A greater volume of traffic using this James Street corner is likely to cause a build-up, and the build-up is already happening. These vehicles will eventually start taking risks just to get out. And that is an issue pretty well all over Moss Vale at the moment. We know that there is a problem. And if I can just go back, there was a thought I had there and I've forgotten what it was. Sorry. It might come back to me later, perhaps. Yes, I did want to say that none of us object to development. Development's important for every town. We need to keep the town alive. But I do think that there are too many. We have now had 15 new houses built on the James Street, on the Young Road, Wembley Road corner, and another 22 is excessive. 37 houses built to modern standards, 2-car garages, and they need 2-car garages because everybody works. That is a lot more traffic than you are anticipating. Thank you.
Thank you. Larissa, did you have any questions?
No actual questions. I just wanted to know where, is it Denise came, what address are you at,
5
Denise?
James Street.
You're
And
number
if
5.
anyone wants to come and look at my land, they can do so, because there are trenches of where the last lot of rain, which was excessive, I will admit, but it has caused big channels all through my land. And this happens every time there is heavy rain.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Alf, did you have any questions?
No, I have no
No.
questions.
Chris, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Thank you. No, I don't have any questions. Thank you, Ms. Heaslop. So that concludes the objector addresses. I have one speaker for the applicant, Jean Ingenhoff from Land Team Australia. Are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, hi, how are you? So what are you, a planner or a...
I'm a civil engineer.
A civil engineer, okay.
Land Team has a town planner who's prepared our statement of environmental effects.
Yes, oh no, that's okay. Being a civil engineer is fine. And I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You can obviously see that one of the big issues is the stormwater drainage, and it was an issue that was ventilated at the last panel meeting when I don't think it was you, I think it was another engineer who spoke. Yeah. Anyway, please proceed.
Okay, so thank you. So yes, we lodged our DEA application in May. I know Council's been busy in November. I think we had the panel meeting, with which I joined. And as such, I think following that, there were some questions, and I think there were about 5 deferral items raised for us to go back and address. So I guess first of all, I might just run through those 5 items, and then I've been taking notes, I guess, throughout the course of those comments. I guess first of all, the pedestrian pathway. That is something that I was looking at. There is a steep embankment going up into Robinson Road. I do agree, that the Robinson Road is sort of a, I guess, fraught with danger and crossing it at many points. As I see, if we're putting up a pathway, it's going to have to go up a steep embankment. We're going to have to introduce retaining walls into that road verge to be able to do that, which the OMS will see as a hazard. We're also now encouraging people to cross at another point. So it's not good practice to have crossings, I guess, so many crossings designated on a road like that. And in good conscience, I mean, if I'm asked to now put this onto my plans, I don't really want to be, I guess, responsible for an additional pedestrian and traffic hazard. I guess that's going to have to come back onto our name. If we do, as discussed, I think if we do have to shift that, we are currently on the 700 minimum lot size. And that will sort of force, and we have sort of had the intention of maintaining existing dwelling on lot 11. I see no need for that to be demolished. If we do introduce a pathway, I guess council's going to have to mow and become an asset of theirs. It is going to have to push our lots all the way down, I guess, to lot 1. So I do strongly object to the pathway being there. As I understand, there's been no advice from any other traffic engineers within council for this. There are crossings at the moment at James Street and at Birchall. So I really do request that we don't proceed with this. At the moment, we've been discussing, I guess, one of the applicants' existing issues with accessibility and on Robinson Road. These aren't issues that we're introducing with this development. And if a pathway doesn't go through, it really does maintain the status quo. I'll move on, I guess, just to the next point being the stormwater detention basin. So I guess the main comments that were raised last time, and I've gone away and we've remodelled. I guess, first of all, to start off with, council has a design specification. They have standards and codes that give a level playing field to everyone. We've met those requirements. We've modelled it. We've undertaken 3 modelling of the road and earthworks of the stormwater. That's being sent through to Council Development Engineer, who's been able to review it. I guess if we're being asked to go above and beyond what council standard is, I find that incredibly unfair. I think we just want a clear goalpost, and we're working to those current goalposts. And I don't think that, I don't think it's too much to ask for to have, I guess, some consistency with what we're meant to achieve. So we've actually gone and done a few things with our redesign. I think the main complaint was about the retaining walls and fencing it off, that we didn't want to have that. So what we've done is we've actually been able to move our on-site detention to under the road itself using sort of an underground concrete storage structure, kind of like giant culverts. The basin itself, we've been able to make it a bit shallower in that case, and now batter it and give it a sensible batter and a depth that isn't hazardous. So in that case, we've now eliminated the fence, which that was the objective that was given to me, and I think that we've achieved that. With respect, I guess, to a lot of the issues that were raised with the existing problem of stormwater, like there is a big catchment that comes up from the Wembley Road that we've measured. I think it's 14.8 hectares. Accordingly, our plan proposes significant infrastructure, large pipes through the site that direct it through. A lot of concern there was about James Street, which I understand, I guess, as the current status quo. In a post-development situation, all of that drainage will be a lot more formalised. All of the dwellings along there will be directing their stormwater back to the new road, the new cul-de-sac road, and away from any of the properties that front James Street. As I said, we've undertaken there's a software program called Drains that we use. That's an industry standard. I did note, I think there were some comments last time about we had a few pits with 90-degree turns. Those pits do have higher pit losses than, say, a straight pit, but that doesn't mean that they don't work. And those pit loss coefficients have been suitably put into our model. Saying that, we actually did remove those 90-degree turns, and we've actually got I think it's a 45 now going into our new basin. I think there's only, so yeah, we removed one, and there's still only one remaining. That's right. So I'll keep moving. I've only got 5 minutes. I think we had an item there about Endeavour Energy, which was a bit surprising. So we can't actually make an application to Endeavour Energy about the electrical capacity until we have a DA consent. They don't accept it. But that's not really, I guess, a concern. That there is HV infrastructure in the area. That HV infrastructure can be extended into our development if need be, if the LV capacity isn't currently up to standard, and a new substation will be put in at the developer's expense. That's a very sort of standard subdivision procedure. And it certainly shouldn't hold up DA approval. Next item was about the house, the existing house on lot 11. And again, that is an existing entrance. RMS doesn't allow any additional entrances onto their classified roads. We had 2. We've now reduced that to 1, and which is functional. Currently, the way the house is positioned, and as I said, there's no desire to demolish that. I think unnecessarily. I think that would be a waste of resources. The way the house is positioned is that at the rear of the house, if it was to be accessed from the cul-de-sac, it's above the ground level. Someone would have to park their car and then walk all around the house to get to enter into the front door. And I don't think that's an acceptable solution. RMS has received the application, and they've accepted our access off Robinson Road just for that one lot. The rest will all have to be accessed from the cul-de-sac. And I think the last comment we received was about the shed on lot 10, which was just a type on our plans that was meant to be removed, and the plans are updated as such. We'll try and run through some of the comments quickly. And I guess personally, Edna's, and I think with the existing stormwater drainage, which I don't want to backtrack on my own words already, but if we're talking about existing issues, I guess what our, like as the developer's consultant, all we can look at is what are our current pre-development flows that are coming off our site, and we have to ensure that in a post-development situation that our flows are no greater or less than that pre-development situation, and that's why I guess we specified the OSD, the underground OSD, which normally council just flat out says no to in terms of as an asset that they take over. But in this case, that they've allowed that as a solution. So I think that's great. I think that'll certainly help slow those flows coming off our site. But I guess that's our benchmark. We can work to the standards. If there are issues that were created 20 years ago, I think it's incredibly unfair to look at our development as I guess it's causing that. I guess all we can do is not exacerbate it. If council was interested in looking at some solutions that might sort of be able to help that, I know the developer involved. I guess the only way we could do that, and I know that Michael Park's online, if they were open to doing some sort of works in kind, I guess to augment some of these existing works down in the soccer fields and away from our site. But our responsibility really is our site, and I think our documentation has addressed that. Again, I think traffic was a major issue that was raised. As I understand that was referred to council traffic engineer with no issues raised. And yeah, I'm a little bit surprised. I think with the using the example of the soccer traffic, which obviously has really high peak traffic flow rates, is a bit sort of unfair with comparison to our site. But I'll leave it there because I know it was referred to the traffic engineer, who's a qualified engineer, and in terms of what the standards are, there are no issues raised with that. Sewerage was raised too as an issue with capacity. Again, we commissioned Cargo, I guess going through council's sewer water engineer to undertake modelling of existing sewer and water infrastructure and look at what impact our development would have on that. And again, in accordance with the Steel Code of Australia, our development was seen to have an acceptable impact on the network, and there was capacity. So we've certainly addressed that. But I know there was a lot of people saying they're not development, but it was still raised with overdevelopment. It's probably not something as an engineer I can really comment on. As someone who tried to buy into the market only just 5 years ago, though, I can take the engineer's hat off and I guess a young person's hat off. I really can't agree with that attitude. I think that I guess is only really looking after the established interests, but I'll leave that there. I don't think I should get into that as an engineer.
Okay, you're going to have to wrap it up now, Dean.
Yeah, we'll do. I'll just run through. I don't think there are any others.
I think there'll be some questions for sure. I've got some.
Okay. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you. So I forgot to ask you, I normally ask applicants, you've had a look at the council officer's report for this meeting, have you?
Yeah, I had, yeah.
And did you read through the conditions?
The draft conditions?
Yes.
I haven't read, but it wasn't today, but yes, I have.
Okay, so it's just a small point on the removal of the driveway access to lot 11, the driveway access to Robertson Road. There are actually some conditions in that report that require that driveway access to be removed. So that's actually a recommendation from the council officers. So I just wanted to point that out to you. That's actually a draft condition or number of draft conditions. And the second issue is that obviously it exercised the mind of the previous panel, of which myself and Mr. Lester were at that meeting, this question about the stormwater detention basin, which also has this dual role of being a bio basin for the Sydney catchment. Do you think it's reasonable and or likely to set up future problems that the basin on lot 1 is actually draining all of these lots, which obviously are going to have a lot of flow of water? Do you think that that's actually reasonable for that one lot owner to bear all of that responsibility? So having regard to, if you've read the report, you know that the council officers have said they don't want the infrastructure on the council roadway, they want it on the private land. So do you think that might be more reasonable to be, for example, a community lot in a community title subdivision where all of the lot owners have to bear the cost and the responsibility for that?
I find that incredibly unreasonable to request. I guess looking at precedents in the area, and I know the basin up the road was discussed a lot.
Yeah.
If council, so as I said, I try to shift as much of the on-site detention function into the road reserve. I know the bar retention that they don't want to take over, or they won't take over.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think council's policy should prejudice, I guess, should mean that I guess we're having troubles getting our DA through if we're following council policy. That's a completely irrelevant discussion, I feel. But perhaps, I mean, you know, I guess I encourage people, maybe they could lobby council to have the design specs changed and policy changed. But, you know, I understand. So in order to treat the road, and I've done the modelling, and I am an expert in it, the only way to achieve what's called the mutual beneficial effect with New South Wales is to treat this road runoff. And that means sort of an end-of-line treatment. So we have to put a basin somewhere. If council wanted to take over it, okay, I guess they'll have to change their policy. But I mean, I guess all I want is a level playing field with what every other developer's been doing in the area. So I mean, by all means, I think that a conversation about council policy could be had. But with respect to the development application, I've done everything in accordance with the engineering spec, the design spec. With any bit of council policy, is there anywhere that I haven't complied with what council's current policies are?
I guess what my question is to you, having heard the speakers about the stormwater issues, you can see the land, what the slope of the land is. It obviously gets a lot of drainage through it. Do you think it's an unreasonable impost on this one individual owner of Lot 1 to be responsible for maintaining this facility?
Look, we do have there's 14.8 hectares upstream catchment that comes through the site. That water doesn't go into the basin. That bypasses the basin. Well, most of it. So there's what we're sort of proposing is very large pipes that go down and actually bypasses the LSD, goes behind the basin, turns out not that 190 degree, and then out to the existing culvert where there'll be a new pit built over the top that the road will be extended. What we proposed there was to put a low flow outlet, so like that goes into the basin. So all the lots from 1 to 22 on our development are proposed to be directed that way. But what we can do certainly is to put 2 outlet pipes in, and this comes down to detailed design post consent. You put a low flow at a lower level, just smaller, that restricts how much water can go in there, but still allows you to hit reduction targets for transparent solids, nitrogen, phosphorus. And then the bypassing flow goes into the larger pit, into the larger network, and around. So it is a large bioretention that one owner will have to maintain. It's not ideal, but if that's council policy, that's all I can work to. I guess.
Have you done developments elsewhere where it has been a community title scheme?
Not as community title. I've done developments in certainly like plenty other local government areas, neighbouring ones, Wallandilly, Goulburn, who do now take them over. I think they previously, certainly Goulburn previously had an opinion of not wanting to take them over as assets, but have now changed that. And again, yeah, Wallandilly are open to it as well. So I really find it odd that we're being punished for going ahead with council's policy and being in line with their design spec. A community title, this is a Torrens title subdivision, and I think that's again unfair. Lot 1 was made larger, I guess, for that reason, to be able to sort of still give them room. Perhaps maybe that lot might not be as attractive as the others, but But I mean, yeah, I guess that's
Okay.
the developer's prerogative. Yeah, we really don't have any viable alternatives.
Okay, so they were my questions. Did you have any questions, Larissa?
I suppose what I wanted, Dean, if you could just explain, it's a bit going into the basics of your amended scheme. But can you just explain to me, so you've got a basin, the current proposal is a basin within the roadway?
Not a basin, an underground detention storage. So they're like large.
An OSD?
Yeah. But
Right. So hold the water and it'll gradually release it back to the existing drainage or the new drainage system.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So by doing that, you're reducing the capacity or need for that lot 1 OSD that's there at the moment. Is that right? So you still have one there as well, but it'll be a smaller OSD because you're going to have 2.
So there's 2 things we have to achieve. One is the quantity, and that really is, I guess, that the council requirement, and that's that our post-development flows and no greater than our pre-development. So in the road reserve, that's purely for OSD.
Yes.
In our previous design, we had a base on lot 1, which had a dual function of water quality and water quantity. So water quality is our second objective. That's a Wood New South Wales requirement.
Yep.
That means that I think we have to demonstrate that, again, in a pre-development versus post-development situation, our total suspended solids, our nitrogen, our phosphorus runoff caused by these hard sandy areas is 10% or greater improved in that pre-development situation. So in order to do that, really, you need a bioretention basin, and that's what's on lot 1. That's like a sand filter with which is vegetated in a certain way. It takes up those pollutants, and that's the item, the water quality function that council isn't prepared to take over. Hence,
right.
And you know this has to be an open basin. It needs sunlight. Needs
Okay, so that's at the moment that is on lot 1 as you propose it in the amended scheme on lot 1, and that would be the issue where the lot 1 would be having to maintain that facility, but the OSD that's proposed in the roadway would be, council would have to take that over in the roadway, of which I understand there's a separate issue of whether they want to or they don't on that basis.
Well,
is that right? Is that how
I guess previously, prior to this application, I would never consider putting underground storage in a Windsor Caribou project. Other council areas I would, because they're open to the idea. In this case, I think the only way to make that impost on lot 1 smaller is to pull out some of that OSD function into the road reserve any way I could, and that was with an underground storage. And the modelling worked out really well with it. I think the results were really good. So I guess it's for any of the stormwater concerns. This development, I guess, has a special sort of allowance to have this. I mean, the plans went back to council development engineer when they were reviewed, as I understand that they were endorsed.
you mean the amended plans they endorsed?
Yeah, as I understand, so that there's been no objections to that.
Okay. Not sure that's correct, but yeah, okay. I didn't, from the report, I think council has a concern of the OSD in the roadway because of the potential construction, like the potential damage from construction activity onto that basin, or the OSD, from my understanding, but I can confirm that. So the problem I have is I'm trying to work out, I think we've got an issue with imposing a big system and the maintenance and the management of this system onto one lot. And I think it's unfair and it's quite a poor planning result. That's basically what I think, that's my opinion anyway. And I'm trying to look at what are all our options of reducing that impost, but also being fair and equitable and seeing what the right arrangement for this kind of stormwater drainage how it should be dealt with. That's where we're probably grappling a little bit with.
If I was able to send you a bunch of other developments, like a fairly healthy list of very similar developments in Winter Caribbean which have been recently approved, which all drain to a bioretention basin, very similar to this, could you then tell me why we're being targeted for having one lot responsible where it happens all the time? And that's in accordance with policy. Are we meant to, I guess, ignore New South Wales advice? I don't understand what we're meant to.
No. And that's fair enough. Like, we'll take that on board, definitely. We're just looking at all the obvious options. You've provided an amendment, another scheme. So it's just trying to understand all the potential options to come up with the best result in approving, refusing, whatever we decide to do with this development. We want to, ensure the best planning kind of outcome.
So because on the panel, I understand there's some planning expertise from the local planning panel. Is there an engineer, a civil engineer on the panel?
Not on this one, no. There was, I think, on the previous panel.
Okay.
But we take advice. We take advice from council. Council's engineers do provide us with advice, so we do have those experts on board.
Okay, and their commentary about taking over the basin, they wanted to take over it, or what was their opinion there in terms of the impost and not one?
Well, there's conditions on the consent about how it's to be managed, and so they've put their conditions forward. So we'll review those.
Okay. Yep. No, I'm happy with that. If it's coming directly from the development engineers who are qualified, who understand the modelling, understand the policies and procedures, then I'm happy with that.
Did you have any more questions, Larissa?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Alf, did you have any questions?
Yes, I do. I should explain that I have been involved in subdivision design and large-scale water quality issues, so my comments might be a bit more specific, but just to go back, the panel's been exposed to serious concerns by people who are, for the most part, on the downside of this proposed subdivision, and have clearly indicated that there are major problems under storm events in Wembley Road and some of the other roads, such as James Road. I suppose the first question I'd have, and I think I know the answer to this from your design, your design provides for no further, your design provides for the maintenance of the existing overland flow as the site is at the moment.
Sorry?
Your design for stormwater provides such that there is no additional flow. In other words, the rate of flow from your combined detention basin stroke bio detention was to be equal to, definitely no greater than the current situation.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Okay. The next question goes to the amended design, which from the briefing we've had does not appear to be supported by council. For the amended design, you had broken it into two components, as you said, an OSD under the road of 35 cubic meters provision, and you'd obviously adjusted the previous detention basin to be a bio-detention basin as well.
Yeah. So previously it was, I guess our only OSD was in that basin, hence why we had to have retaining walls.
Understood.
We were able to sort of minimise that basin by looking back out into the road reserve.
But you're breaking it up into two components, an OSD component under the road and a bio-detention capacity in the basin, in essence.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the impact if your suggested amendment is not supported by the panel or stroke council? as part of the assessment process. And you're back to the very first proposal, which was a much deeper combined OSD biodetention facility. What are the impacts of that decision if that was made that way?
So I'm first of all, I'm quite surprised to hear that. So I think we had the meeting back in November.
Look, I understand, but from the panel's point of view, as Larissa pointed out, we are selected and appointed to make a decision on this matter. And at the moment, we're provided with advice that your amended design does not appear to be supported by council. So the implication of that would be that you'd be back to the initial design, which had the deeper basin and the combined basin.
I guess if we are pushed back to that and it needs to be walled or fenced, again, I guess there are a lot of basins in the Highlands, in New Carriby, where that precedent has already been set. Why are we being unfairly treated where every other development is approved, I guess, in this nature? I guess similar developments have basins like this, and I could certainly send you a lot of examples. I mean, if council want the underground storage and a smaller bio on that one, we can do that. That was our amended plans. If they want to put all the imposts, and I guess this is going in complete contradiction to what we just said about reducing the impost on that one. If council wants to do that, we can do that. There are options to be able to do that. I guess another option you might be able to look at is by putting oversized pipes to still maybe find somewhere in between. But as I said, I submitted those amendments back in November, and now I've been waiting for an answer until February.
Right. Okay, can I just ask one? Okay, I've got a further question. In the revised design, which was in the roadway for the OSD, I understood you to say, in response to questions, that the water flow from that was not treated and went through a low flow pipe outlet, obviously compressed to mimic the existing system. But does that have any impact on the quality of water leaving the site, the overall quality of water leaving the site? Because you'd only be treating that component in the reduced basin, the biodetention basin.
No, good question. So I guess the low flow in the pipe to the basin, your most polluting storms are actually your smaller ones. And that initial runoff that comes off, that's really from road drainage. In the music model, you can model it with a low flow bypass so that you only get so much going to the basin. The point I was making with that is, in terms of maintenance of the basin, you can limit the flows going into it, so that it's not going to scour out. It's not going to, be a constant nightmare for whoever owns it. That's the purpose of that low flow. So you can still achieve your reduction targets, right, and limit your flow rate going into the basin as to avoid scouring.
So your phosphates and solids will match the target date. Okay. There was also a reference in your design for a GPT, I think, at the Robertson Road end, but I couldn't find any detail about that. Was there a gross pollutant trap at that point to facilitate?
Yeah. So that again, they're pretty proprietary products on the market. It's only as modeled in our music model, our workload model, really do it as a primary treatment node. So they're really your most basic GPTs. So like a Hume guard or a trash rack would work just fine. That's to sit in between the last pit and the headwater outlet that goes into the basin. So,
given that GPTs generally need to be serviced, and your comment about the need for retaining walls should a pathway go in that system, and the fact that it's below, is there any problem that you see in servicing the GPT at that point?
No, it'll be directly adjacent to the road.
Yeah, but the road corridor you've mentioned is got rather difficult contours.
I think there'd be parking space and room for a sucker truck. I think that would probably be the way council
Okay.
with magnets. Has there been any concerns raised from the council engineers about it?
I don't believe so, but it's a concern that certainly from my experience with GPTs, you need to ensure that they are readily serviceable.
I think I could have the option, I think this would really come down to detailed design. That's often when we get most of our comments from council and it gets looked at in depth. These really are concepts, but that GPT could be moved down to the frontage of lot 12, I think it is, 13, in that area instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's options that we could look at in detailed design, but as a concept, a GPT online, and I think the best one for that one at the top would be probably a trash rack, so it's online. With the bypass internally within the pit, that would probably be the best way of
Right.
the GPT in that location.
Thank you.
Chris, did you have any questions? Chris McCann?
I think you, Julie, and Larissa and Alf have covered off on the majority of questions. Mine really related to the detention basin. I think a lot of that's already been covered off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Dean. So that concludes the speakers for item 5.1. As I indicated at the start, after we've heard from the speakers from the next item, we'll go into closed session and make our determination. Thank you for attending today.
Julie, could I ask a question?
Sorry, no more. No, sorry. Once you speak, you only get one go.
I want to ask a question.
I'm sorry.
You're welcome.
You are not going to speak. You are not going to speak. If you've spoken, you only get to speak once. That's the way we run these meetings. So the next item is 5.2. I understand we have a registered speaker for the applicant. Let's get 5.2. 5.2 is development application 22/0225, boundary adjustment subdivision to create two lots, 74 and 170 Lease Road, Robertson. I understand we have Mr. Vine. Is he present?
I do believe he was waiting in the waiting room. I'll just check that he's being admitted.
Development application 22/0225, boundary adjustment subdivision to create two lots. Hello, Mr. Vine.
Hello. Sorry, can you?
Yes, we can see you and we can hear you. So you've obviously read the council officer's report.
I have read the officer's report, yes.
Okay. And we have received and read your submission and the submission from the applicant.
Yep. Yeah. So there was a submission that was provided on behalf of the applicant by Beaconsfield lawyers. And there was a second submission that was prepared and tendered from the owner of number 170 Lees Road, Robertson.
Yes, we've received that.
Excellent. So if I may, obviously there's no objections to this application, and I don't understand. I believe there's no one speaking against the matter. So if I may, I just want to, I guess, speak to the panel about the assessment report and some of the issues that I have with that, as well as just going to, I guess, the refusal reasons and how they, I believe, have some problems, and I'll obviously welcome any questions at the end from the panel. But firstly, I guess we're a bit confounded by the assessment officer's conclusion with this particular matter. It's what we believe to be a fairly simple and compliant boundary adjustment between two adjacent rural properties. The proposal is essentially formalising two existing long-standing lease agreements between two adjacent properties, one of which is Sheldon Farm Pastoral, and the other one is the Hajawani Farm Group. Basically, this application is relying on a clause that specifically sets out the ability to adjust particular boundaries between adjacent rural properties. And I'm a bit a bit concerned about the commentary in the assessment officer's report that refers to us proposing a 79.8% variation to the lot requirement. And I think it needs to be made abundantly clear to the panel that the application before them is for a boundary adjustment. It is fully compliant with the numerical aspects and elements of the LEP. And it is a proposal for subdivision, but it is a boundary adjustment proposal for subdivision. Now, I'm sure the panel is aware of this, but just for completeness, I just want to distinguish between two clauses in the LEP that are referenced in the assessment officer's report. The first is clause 4.1, which is a clause that relates generally to subdivision and sets out minimum lot sizes. Now, in this particular instance, and this site, there's a requirement for a 40 hectare minimum lot size. There's also a very specific clause, which is clause 4.2b, that relates to boundary adjustments between rural properties. It's a very pointed and specific clause. It's got a raft of numerical requirements that accompany it. It's not an open slather for to get around the subdivision requirements of clause 4.1. But I think it's very important to distinguish the intentions behind these two clauses. And I'll go to that later on in the refusal reasons, which are mainly drafted about this proposal not complying with the objectives of the subdivision clause generally. Now, as I said, the clause 4.2 facilitates boundary adjustments, and it's exactly what we're proposing. You need to be in a zone that qualifies. It needs to result in a lot that's not less than 2 hectares. There's got to be no additional dwelling entitlements created. It can't increase the number of lots, which I think goes to the point of fragmentation. And there's other merit issues like not having an impact on rural and residential land uses. So this clause is very specific and particular, and it is not the same as the intention behind the clause for subdivision generally, which obviously contains a raft of objectives that go with that. Now, the assessment officer, you may read in the report, I guess in the introduction, it talks about there being a 79% variation or 78% variation to the LEP requirement. But when the assessment report goes to the assessment of clause 4.2b, it's very clear that all numerical aspects of this clause are maintained. And I guess the intention behind us providing the advice by Beaconsfield lawyers is to really interrogate the legality of an assessment that would preface objectives of clause 4.1, which for subdivision generally, and they would use those objectives as determinative weight to recommend reasons for refusal, despite achieving clear numerical compliance with a very pointed and specific control that facilitates exactly what we're proposed. So that, and I assume the panel have gone or have read that legal advice, and I'm happy to have any discussions about that if needs be. But what I'll do, just going to the final parts of the assessment report, I will note that that the officer has reported that that he's sent out various referral requests from the Rural Fire Service, engineering departments, amongst others, and the report conclusively says that there's no objections to anything we're proposing. The report also concludes that there were no submissions received on the application or no objections that were made on the application. And I guess, that without sort of labouring the point, the issue really is the interpretation of the construction of this clause and the application of that to a boundary adjustment, and the need to distinguish that from generally subdivision, which is what's under clause 4.1. Now, I guess turning to the refusal reasons, now for the panel to have comfort in endorsing the reasons for refusal of this report, they need to know very clearly that this report, this application is being refused for, I believe, 3 or 4 reasons. 4 reasons. The first of which is that despite relying on this boundary adjustment clause, the objectives of the subdivision clause generally is lent on here with determinative weight. And the recommendation for refusal says that we're essentially going to give rise to a land fragmentation, as well as having a significant impact on agricultural resources. Now, as I said before, this boundary adjustment provision doesn't allow land fragmentation. What it does is it allows boundary adjustments. No new lots are created. The inherent threshold criteria of relying on clause 4.2b is that the rural purpose of land will be maintained and boundaries and allotments will not be fragmented. I guess, secondly to that first objection, first reason for refusal, which relates to the objectives of clause 4.1, we should be making, I would like to make it very clear that all we're doing in this particular instance is facilitating a boundary adjustment to formalise what is a long-standing rural operation between two adjoining landowners. As you would have probably read in the planning report, I guess the primary landowner is Sheldon Park Pastoral. They're an established beef cattle company. They have been renting this portion of the property off the owner of 170 Lees Road for some time. And in doing so, the owner of 170 has been operating in his current rural operation as a primary producer. So the idea of this being a fragmentation exercise and the idea of this being having an impact on a significant rural resource or agricultural resource is just unfounded by the clear compliance with what we're proposing. The second refusal reason as well, I lament to say, it relates to another objective, and that's the objective of clause 4.1. Determinative weight has been applied in this instance because, and it says that we don't meet the minimum lot area, and it also says that we have not created a lot that is consistent with the established character of the subdivision pattern of the area. Now, firstly, this clause, this boundary adjustment clause is specifically crafted to allow lot areas that are less than that permitted under clause 4.1. And obviously subject to satisfying all the inbuilt criteria. And I guess secondly, if for one to have concern with departing from an established character of the area, one would assume that there is an existing established prolific character of there being 40 hectare lots across the board. I did a very quick 6 maps exercise not long ago, and of the 5 lots that adjoin 170 Lees Road, I believe that 4 of those are less than 40 hectares. And the only lot that exceeds 40 hectares is a lot that is 40 hectares, and it's owned by Sheldon Park Pastoral, and it forms part of this boundary adjustment. So I just can't accept the argument that there's a departure from an established character, and one just needs to do a quick cadastral search to realise that there is not a character of allotments established to such an extent that this is going to have a discordant or offensive impact on the subdivision pattern. I guess that's probably dealt with the refusal reason 2, which is the clause objective. And I guess the third refusal reason is a reason that relates generally to the impact on the natural environment. And it turns to fragmentation of land again, and it also questions the viability of the agricultural land parcel known as 170 Lees Road, Robertson. I guess the reason that the owner was very keen on providing this submission to the panel, or the submission that they provided, was to say that they run a business. They grow orchids. They run cattle, they provide fodder in winter. They've got a rural operation that exists, and it's existed in the 8.66 hectare configuration that they're currently running for some time because of this lease agreement that's been in place. There's fences, it's all established, and it's how it's currently run. So I guess the off-the-cuff contention from the assessment officer that it's going to impact on the viability of this land is incorrect. The lot area will be 8.66 hectares, and this boundary adjustment provision, if I call it that, allows lots down to as small as 2 hectares, which we're not doing for the very purpose of the property owner wanting to maintain a working rural activity at his property. I guess. And just finally, it's a throwaway objection reason about an establishment of an undesirable precedent, which I can't imagine being substantiated by a scheme that is that's compliant with prescriptive numerical compliance with the LEP. So look, I'll probably leave it at there. I just wanted to draw attention to the assessment of the report, I wanted to draw attention to the legal opinion and findings, which aren't confident with determinative weight applied to objectives rather. And I just wanted to really illuminate those reasons for refusal that the panel has to sit here and endorse on those particular grounds. And I really don't believe it's an assessment that is legally sound in this particular circumstance. But by all means, I'm more than happy to take any questions from the panel as they come about.
Thank you, Mr. Vine. I'll go first. So do you have the clauses in front of you?
I do.
Yeah. So you're not saying that the objectives in clause 4.1 of the LEP are irrelevant considerations. You're just saying that it's a matter of which determinative weight must not be given.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that 4.1 is a subdivision clause, and it's a general subdivision clause, and it's got a particular, very clear intention, and it's got objectives associated with it, and I don't disagree with that. What I want to distinguish here is that the function and the intention of clause 4.2b is contrasted to that of clause 4.1. So what I'm saying is I'm not comfortable with the opinion of the assessment officer that despite achieving numerical compliance with this enabling provision that encourages and endorses lots less than 40 hectares, I'm not comfortable that you can generally construe an objective from clause 4.1 and apply determinative weight in that particular circumstance.
But you're not saying if it was one consideration, you're not saying it would be an irrelevant consideration.
No, I think it's relevant, absolutely. But then if you want,
you don't need to go any further.
Okay.
So could you have a look at clause 4.2b, which I admit I haven't looked at this clause before and I haven't come across it before, but see the objective in 4.2b1. The objective of this clause is to permit the boundary between two lots to be altered in certain circumstances to give landowners a greater opportunity to achieve the objectives of the zone or of a zone. And so my question to you is, how does this subdivision meet that objective?
Well, the subdivision, it's pretty clear. The objectives of the zone is to promote minimal environmental impacts and ongoing viable agricultural use of land. And we've gone to this in detail in the statement of environmental effects. And the boundary adjustment between those two lots, it will secure the increase in the lot size of number 74 Lees Road, which forms part of a large and established beef cattle property and rural operation. And what it will do is we'll incorporate all of that land into that larger operation. But in doing so, it doesn't result in a lot that's so small and insignificant and compromised to such an extent that it won't allow that viable agricultural activity to continue to occur on 170 Lees Road. And that's how the objectives of the clause are quite clear. The objectives of the zone are quite clear in the sense that it's that combination of the environmental impacts and the intent is really for rural agricultural activities.
Okay, that was all my questions. Larissa, did you have any questions?
No questions from me. No.
Alf, did you have any questions?
I think he's on mute.
Oh, Alf, you're on mute.
No, sorry. Yeah. I have similar issues that you've already raised. I still didn't get a response to the question that you raised about how, under the objectives, how this gave the landowners a greater opportunity to achieve the objectives of the zone compared to the existing position.
Well, I think so it's going to give, I don't think, I guess it's a semantic. It says to give a landowner greater opportunity to achieve the objectives of the zone. And in my view, a greater opportunity is served by the boundary adjustment to allow that Sheldon Park Agricultural to incorporate this parcel of land into their operation, and so they can increase their operation. They've got the money. They've been doing a lot of paddock restoration works. They've got the money, and they have every intention of doing further restoration of the paddock that they're going to be annexing to, or that they're intending on annexing to the rest of the property. And what that will do is it will allow the injection of that economy of scale to associate or to incorporate that land parcel into that larger operation. And in my view, it absolutely will provide a greater opportunity for the zone objectives to provide a strong, larger rural agricultural activity at the property.
In part, it'd be possible to understand from your answer that they haven't been, they have not been following that sort of activity with the least part of the land to date. Is that correct? I mean, to get a greater opportunity would imply that there's something lesser in the current arrangement.
Can I answer that question possibly, Michael?
Yeah.
Sure,
Sorry,
Luke.
Luke's from Sean Park.
From Sean Park. So in reality, there's a lot of money invested in partial improvement in fencing, and unless we to own the property, we probably wouldn't invest anywhere near as much, and as a result, we're unable to put the same capacity of cattle and do less employment of people in the area by having a lesser headcount. But the pasture improvement that's required to get it to the level of the rest of our farm, it's very obvious if you were to drive by our farm versus the one we lease are at very different levels, because the level of investment required to get it to where it could have its maximum capacity is quite high, and we wouldn't invest that money unless we were to actually own that land, because otherwise it's a lease that could effectively, we could lose the money if we don't have that lease in the future.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry,
actually, Mr. Park, was it? I'll just get your name for the record. Was it Sean? It's coming up as
It's
Luke
Gielan.
Luke Gielan, correct.
Okay, thank you. Larissa, do you have another question?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Michael, have you done any historic, like have you looked at any DAs or any other similar developments in the immediate area that have been approved, for example? Because we don't have that as part of the report. And I was just wondering if you'd done anything like that to understand. And I didn't ask this of council, it's just kind of come across now. I'm just trying to see if you've looked at any other properties that have used this and done a similar thing.
When we started investigating the ability to undertake the boundary adjustment, I actually made contact with a duty planner and had a general discussion with them. They were aware that this clause had been applied in the past, and encouraged me to, as long as I met the prescriptive requirements, to go about and propose it. I may have documentation written down somewhere of those particular instances, but not to hand at the moment. But I was certainly told that this clause had been applied in the past. And I was also told by the assessing officer that the clauses had been applied in the past, and the way that they apply them is that despite allowing departures to the numerical controls, that they still refer them to the panel as they believe that there is a genuine departure from the lot size requirement. And that's, and so obviously there's a history of these things having been done before.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Chris McCann, did you have any questions?
No, thanks, Jill. I think it's all been covered off by both Alf and yourself and Larissa. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I guess just really, obviously we've put forward our position and tabled a discussion. We would obviously be requesting that the panel approve the application or have the application put back for approval subject to conditions. And at the very least, if the panel has concerns with any particular aspects of this that need further clarification, we're happy for a deferral to be put in place. I don't know how constructive it would be from us. A refusal, we would consider our options with a refusal, but any commentary in doing a refusal on what the panel would like to see would be something we'd take into account doing a review of the decision. But we'd certainly take all that into account. But first and foremost, we'd be requesting that this application goes back for further assessment and is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Vine. So that, and thank you for your advice. It was very comprehensive. We have 2 planning proposal matters on the agenda, but there are no speakers. So that brings to a conclusion the public meeting. It's 5:12 p.m. We'll now close the meeting go into closed session, and we'll reopen the meeting to announce our decisions, which, as I said, will be on the website within 2 business days. I would think will be at least an hour. So we'll just close the meeting now. Thank you.
So can I just clarify, will you
Sorry?
reopen the meeting and announce those decisions, did you say?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
fantastic.
so,
About an hour.
yeah, no, I'm saying it'll be at least an hour. Yeah.
Okay, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.